And now I invite the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, the Honorable Utah, to make his presentation.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me first of all take this opportunity to recognize the visionary leadership of His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Irfan Ali, President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. Let me also take this opportunity to thank my dear colleague and friend, Minister responsible for Finance, for his accurate representation of the President's vision and the will of the Guyanese people in the 2025 budget themed a secure, prosperous, and sustainable Guyana. Mr. Speaker, if you allow me to reflect for a moment on over the last 4 years, the stewardship of His Excellency and his leadership, we've moved in 2020 from a plan for prosperity to a path to recovery, economic dynamism, and resilience. Steadfast against all challenges, resolute in building our one Guyana, improving lives today, building prosperity for tomorrow. 2024, staying the course, building prosperity for all. Mr. Speaker, I wanted to highlight these thematic areas that cover the budgets from 2020 to 2025 to show the trajectory and the clear vision and leadership of His Excellency the President, and the fact that we have been able to deliver to the people of this dear land of ours. As we approach the implementation of the budget for this year, Mr. Speaker, 2025, and with, of course, the support from this side of the House and the support from the opposite side of the House, I know that we will be making the people of Guyana proud. I think it was very admirable, Mr. Speaker, listening to the Honorable Gita Chandan from the other side of the House this morning on a very clear and objective understanding of the budget 2025 and her recognition of the stewardship of His Excellency the President, highlighting our performance indicators. I think that is very commendable, and the people who support the APNO AFC coalition should be very proud of the representation that they're receiving from that honorable member, and I thank her for her submission. Mr. Speaker, allow me to also highlight the key aspects of my dear colleague, the Honorable Susan Rodriguez, for her submission in highlighting very important points that have led to Guyana's trajectory in terms of our development. And I think it's very important for us to understand that we have been very clear, we've been very articulate, and we've been very responsible as a government. Mr. Speaker, recall when we took office in 2020, we did not have a foreign policy. When we took office in 2020, we did not inherit a foreign policy from the APNO AFC. That will bring clarity.
You're being charged of it.
So, Mr. Speaker, if you look at what we've achieved thus far, we have been able to use our development here in Guyana and to take that development across the world under the leadership of His Excellency the President as a model for development, especially in developing countries. Mr. Speaker, importantly for us in the Foreign Ministry, we have the responsibility of executing the President's mandate on foreign policy, which would allow me to begin with the protection of Guyana's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Mr. Speaker, we remain cognizant of the fact that for Guyana's economic prospects to be fully realized, our relations with bordering countries, especially those that harbor ambitions to the very territory we need to develop, must be carefully managed. Guyana's diplomacy would therefore be at the forefront of the efforts aimed at ensuring a positive and stable environment for the development of critical industries, including the hydrocarbon and related sectors, during this year and the next few years as we seek to move our country forward. In this regard, in fulfillment of the mandate to protect and preserve Guyana's territorial integrity, on the Venezuela front, the ministry focused on three broad areas, namely, one, lobbying for international support against the claims of Venezuela to Guyana's territory; two, the advancement of our case before the International Court of Justice, the ICJ; and three, the sensitization of the local and international community on Guyana's border issues. Mr. Speaker, in relation to the claims of Venezuela, there are systematic approaches made to individual states as well as critical international organizations and bodies, including CARICOM, the Commonwealth, the United Nations Security Council, and the OAS, to name a few. And this is to support Guyana's bid to preserve its sovereignty and territorial integrity, and in its call for the denunciation of the actions of Venezuela that were in contravention of the December 1st, 2023 ICJ General International Law and the Joint Declaration of the Argyle for Dialogue and Peace between Guyana and Venezuela on December 14, 2023. In a statement released on April 15, 2024, the United Nations Security Council urged the parties to exercise maximum restraint, reminding of the obligations to comply with the Order of Provisional Measures issued by the International Court of Justice on the 1st of December 2023, and underlining the importance of maintaining regional peace and security and ensuring that the Latin America and Caribbean region remains a zone of peace. Both CARICOM and the Commonwealth urged Venezuela to refrain from any further actions that would hinder regional and hemispheric peace and stability, and to adhere to the international law as the only viable path to achieve a just and lasting settlement to the controversy. Mr. Speaker, on December 9, 2024, Guyana submitted to the ICJ its final written brief on the merits in the case against the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. Venezuela will have the opportunity to respond to Guyana's reply with its rejoinder, due on the 8th of August this year. The court will in due course set a date for the oral hearings. Guyana welcomes Venezuela's engagement in the merits of the case. Mr. Speaker, with respect to the management of our relations with Suriname, the accumulation and analysis of historical documents relating to the unresolved border issues between the two countries has been and will continue to be given significant attention. Preparations are underway for the convening of a meeting of the Border Commission between Guyana and Suriname this year. We reaffirmed the commitment of our two countries to pursue the agreed initiatives within the Strategic Dialogue and Cooperation Platform, or the SDCP. Several issues of mutual benefit to both sides were discussed, including the bridging of the Corentyne River. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry will continue to employ several multimedia avenues to disseminate information on Guyana's borders. In this regard, our diplomats, both at home and abroad, are continually briefed on the strategy of the government and the role they play in carrying out this strategy. Mr. Speaker, allow me to reflect on our participation at the multilateral level. Guyana's international engagements are grounded in the provisions of our Constitution, respect for the purposes and principles of the United Nations Charter, and the fundamental adherence to international law. This, in turn, guides the pursuit of the key objectives of our foreign policy, which include the following. One, the maintenance of Guyana's sovereignty and territorial integrity, and promoting regional and international support to this end. Two, to maintain, develop, and enhance relations with strategic countries at the bilateral, regional, and multilateral levels, and to ensure that Guyana is actively and meaningfully engaged in the multilateral arena. Three, to focus on ensuring that Guyana can build the partnerships required to achieve its development objectives, including full implementation of the 2030 Agenda on the Sustainable Development Goals, and that Guyana contributes substantively to the global fora dedicated to advancing their implementation. Mr. Speaker, Guyana's approach to human rights issues is premised on the obligations deriving from the Constitution, the Universal Declaration on Human Rights, and the several international instruments to which Guyana is party, including the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, as well as to advance Guyana's leading role in finding solutions to global challenges, including climate security, food security, and energy security. Mr. Speaker, we've had a very active participation at the level of the United Nations Security Council for the year 2024. So please allow me to update the citizens. Since commencing its tenure on the United Nations Security Council on January 1st, 2024, Guyana has actively worked to enhance partnerships with fellow council members within the framework of the Africa Tree or the African Group, the elected 10 or the elected 10 members, and the permanent 5 members to advance the mandate of the Security Council, which is the exercise of the primary responsibility for the maintenance of international peace and security. Mr. Speaker, Guyana served as President of the Council for the month of February 2024 and has hosted a signature event under the theme, The Impact of Climate Change and Food Insecurity on the Maintenance of International Peace and Security. This event was chaired by His Excellency President Dr. Mohamed Irfan Ali. During 2024 as well, Mr. Speaker, Guyana collaborated with the African Group of the Security Council, Algeria, Mozambique, and Sierra Leone through the African Mechanism, which fosters cooperation, consultation, and collaboration between the African Union and CARICOM member states, with a shared commitment to advancing African common positions and amplifying Africa's voice within the Security Council. Mr. Speaker, Guyana continued to work closely with the African Group partners to build consensus on African issues and speak with a unified voice, contributing to key Council outcomes, such as a press conference on Libya, urging de-escalation, and a presidential statement on missing persons. Additionally, the African Group jointly engaged on non-African matters, including Haiti, Colombia, Yemen, Syria, Afghanistan, children in armed conflict, and other topics where member consensus existed. In February 2024, Guyana co-led a field mission to Colombia with the United Kingdom and Switzerland. In October 2024, Guyana was the coordinator of the elected 10 members of the Council. We also partnered with Switzerland as the informal focal point on conflict and hunger within the Security Council for the year 2024. Mr. Speaker, this aligns with Guyana's proactive stance on addressing conflict and hunger, particularly conflict-related food insecurity, which the government of Guyana prioritizes as both a driver and consequence of conflicts. Guyana is also a member of the incoming chair of the Informal Expert Group on Climate, Peace and Security, and was also elected to serve on the Organizational Committee of the Peace Building Commission, the PBC, filling the seat allocated to the Group of Latin American Caribbean States, GRULAC, in the Security Council category. Mr. Speaker, allow me to briefly highlight our achievements on human rights issues, including indigenous peoples and African descent rights and women issues. Guyana participated in its third periodic review in March 2024. The United Nations Human Rights Committee, during 3 of its meetings, considered Guyana's third periodic report under the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, or the ICCPR. Mr. Speaker, Guyana reaffirmed its commitment to honoring its obligations under the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and other applicable conventions. Guyana also updated on actions since the last report, including enactment of new laws and amendment to statutes to strengthen human rights, reform the health system, modernization of the judiciary, implementation of anti-corruption measures, safeguarding revenue from the oil and gas sector for future generations, providing digitalized platforms to make businesses' activities more transparent and accountable. As it pertains to non-refoulement or not forcing migrants to return to their home countries, Mr. Speaker, Guyana stated that migrants from Venezuela were not returned to the country of their origin, but welcomed humanely. Guyana also told the committee of the restitution of the multi-agency committee created to ensure Guyana honors its commitment to international humanitarian law. Mr. Speaker, on reparations, His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Irfan Ali has made several calls for reparations for the historical injustices related to transatlantic slave trade and restitution for the impacts on communities and nations. His Excellency urged that the establishment of a reparations mechanism should be established. Guyana participated in several high-level conferences on human rights related to issues including the 17th session of the Conference of States Parties on the Convention of Rights of Persons with Disabilities, or the CRDP. Mr. Speaker, Guyana also participated in the third session of the Permanent Forum on People of African Descent, which was held in April 2024. During that meeting, Guyana supported calls for a second international decade for the people of African descent. Guyana also proclaimed its commitment to International Convention on the Elimination of all forms of racial discrimination. We have also had the privilege of informing on the progress made by the people of African descent and its budgeted subventions made towards supporting civil society organizations geared towards their continued development. Mr. Speaker, Guyana is also informed that the Ethnic Relations Commission and its purpose for fostering harmony among the ethnic groups in Guyana. Saying in 2024, Mr. Speaker, Guyana participated in the 23rd session of the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. During that session, Guyana reaffirmed its commitment to the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Guyana also had the privilege of informing the session of the progress made by Guyana's First Peoples and its budgeted subventions made towards their continued development. We as a country also shared our unique governance model and indigenous peoples' interaction during the National Tushao Council. Mr. Speaker, at the 113th session, we also participated in a dialogue on the Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, or the CERD. During the session, Mr. Speaker, Guyana was able to engage with the committee and by doing so reaffirmed our commitment to the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination and the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. We also undertook to submit our 15th and 16th periodic reports to that committee. Mr. Speaker, allow me to speak a little bit about our Sustainable Development Goals. The government of Guyana has aligned the country's national development pathway to focus on priority areas such as food security, climate change, and agriculture financing, as it works towards achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SDG 2, zero hunger. The agriculture and food systems sector in Guyana is being repositioned and transformed into an expanded, diversified, modernized, resilient, and competitive sector. Moreover, Guyana has emerged as a leader in CARICOM, being the lead head with responsibility for agriculture, agricultural diversification, and food security within the CARICOM Quasi-Cabinet. As the region implements the CARICOM Agri-Food Systems Agenda, Guyana has committed to playing an integral role in fulfilling the goal of reducing CARICOM's food import bill by 25% this year, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Guyana is making significant strides in advancing health sector resilience to achieve universal health coverage in accordance with SDG 3, good health and well-being. The government of Guyana has prioritized efforts to advance integration of human, animal, and environmental health sectors to improve disease prevention, preparedness, and resilience against climate-related health impacts through the implementation of a One Health approach. By increasing cross-sectoral collaboration, particularly in One Health, and sustaining investments in health, environmental, and emergency response systems, Guyana aims to improve health outcomes, advance universal health coverage, and support regional health security and resilience. Mr. Speaker, the project will strengthen public health preparedness by continuing efforts to build sustainable capacities in pandemic prevention, preparedness, and response following the Guyana COVID-19 Emergency Response Project. Guyana has continued to be a leader on forests. With Guyana's Low Carbon Development Strategy 2030 agenda, showing real results in climate finance with carbon credit sales for the period 2016 to 2020, already earning Guyana $750 million US. This is a result of Guyana's landmark issuance as the first jurisdictional scale carbon credits program in the world, with 33.4 million tons of carbon credits issued to Guyana. Mr. Speaker, additional milestones for Guyana include the fact that His Excellency the President represented Guyana at the 79th session of the United Nations General Assembly and also participated in the debates as well as the Summit of the Future. His Excellency emphasized Guyana's commitment to sustainable development and the combat of climate change. His Excellency also called on countries to fulfill their related pledges to alleviate the challenges faced by small island developing states or SIDS, especially for those affected by the rise in sea levels. He also advocated for action to assure food and energy security, while underscoring the collective responsibility to provide $300 to $500 billion needed to reform the global food system. Mr. Speaker, in advancing our leadership regionally and at the multilateral level, Guyana was elected to serve on several international bodies, such as the Pan American Health Organization, or PAHO, which we are chaired this year. Congratulations to my dear colleague, Dr. Frank Anthony.
Leadership on the global stage.
The Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, and the Organization, or the WMO. Guyana has also won the bid to host the annual exercise of simulation of humanitarian assistance in case of disasters within the ambit of the Organization of American States in 2025. Mr. Speaker, Guyana also hosted the Food and Agriculture Organization's 38th Regional Conference for Latin America and Caribbean states, with representations from 289 participants from 33 countries, 8 United Nations organizations, 13 intergovernmental organizations, 6 civil society organizations, 6 private sector associations, and 10 scientific and academic organizations. Allow me to thank my dear colleague, Minister of Agriculture, Honorable Mustafa, for leading this very, very great initiative. Mr. Speaker,
Tell them
in January 2025,
they can't take it.
Guyana will submit its 4th cycle national report under the Universal Periodic Review process to the Human Rights Council. In addition, the country will be reviewed in May at the Human Rights Council in Geneva, based on the national report submitted in January, the Civil Rights Society reports, special rapporteurs, and other human rights actors in Guyana. Mr. Speaker, Guyana also assumed the role as coordinator of the African Group for the first quarter of 2025. And as part of that role as coordinator, Guyana will hold the African Group retreat in Georgetown in February this year. Mr. Speaker, Guyana will also assume the role of co-chair of the Informal Expert Group on Climate and Security in 2025, along with the Republic of Korea and Slovenia on the United Nations Security Council. Guyana will also resume the presidency of the Security Council for the second time in the month of June 2025. Thematic areas for this signature event are currently being under consideration. Mr. Speaker, wrapping up on the multilateral level,
Don't wrap up. Keep going.
Guyana is campaigning for its candidacy to the Executive Board of the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, at the elections scheduled to take place during the 43rd session of the General Conference of UNESCO in October-November 2025 in Uzbekistan. And my dear colleague, Minister Manik Chan, is going to lead this charge. Mr. Speaker, on our foreign trade policy, Guyana remains an open and liberalized trade policy environment that is consistent with our membership of the Caribbean Community, Single Market and Economy. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation has continued to successfully execute its mandate of articulating and coordinating Guyana's trade policy at the bilateral, regional, and multilateral levels. At the multilateral level, Guyana remains committed to a fair and development-friendly rules-based trading system. Since 2020, the government of Guyana has strengthened the technical capacities of the country's diplomatic representatives, respectively, to the World Trade Organization in Geneva and to the European Union and the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States, or the OACPS, in Brussels. At the WTO, Mr. Speaker, the Guyana mission in Geneva continues to provide group leadership in CARICOM. In CARICOM's representation at the fisheries subsidies negotiations and African, Caribbean, and Pacific group representation on the agriculture negotiations. This is also consistent with Guyana's lead responsibility within CARICOM for agriculture sector development, including agriculture diversification and food security. Mr. Speaker, we continue to implement trade measures directed at the expansion of the economy through enhanced imports and exports profiles, with both traditional and traditional sources. In this regard, we have consistently engaged Guyana's trading partners in relation to the removal of market access barriers with a view to securing and expanding improved market presence for our products in both regional and international markets. Mr. Speaker, between 2020 and 2023, exports increased by 285%, moving from 2.8 billion US dollars to 10.8 billion US dollars, accounting for 106% improvement in our non-oil exports.
To allow you to conclude, Honorable Minister, we'll need an extension.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for reminding us. I'd like to ask that the honourable member be given 5 minutes to conclude his statement to the House.
Thank you, Minister Teixeira. Minister Todd, you may continue to conclude in 5 minutes.
Consequently, trade with our major extra-regional partners increased significantly. Exports to the United States and Canada expanded by 6.2 billion US dollars and 385 billion US dollars respectively. The growth of our exports to the United Kingdom and the European Union has also been exponential, increasing by 747 million US dollars and 2.2 billion US dollars during the period. This trend is reflected in our extra-regional exports, which have risen by US 2.8 billion since 2020. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, exports to non-traditional markets have increased substantially. The UAE, Singapore, and India are now ranked among Guyana's top 10 export destinations, and since 2020, our exports have grown by 2.1 billion US dollars to those countries. Mr. Speaker, we're also strengthening our public-private trade partnership. During the year 2024, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation continued to strengthen our interagency trade policy consultative mechanism with the private sector and the wider business community as strategic partners in trade facilitation and market access development. Allow me to move to diaspora, Mr. Speaker. The government of Guyana, under the leadership of His Excellency, continues to aggressively pursue the involvement of the diaspora community in the national development. During the year 2024, we undertook more than 15 diaspora engagements in approximately 8 jurisdictions. We will continue to engage with the Guyanese living abroad to encourage their involvement in the national development process. Mr. Speaker, on migration, the Ministry has improved the efficiency in the processing to allow for timely deliverables in keeping with the Ministry's mandate. In 2024, the Ministry processed 409 successful applications of Guyanese who remigrated, primarily from the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, and Caribbean states. Since taking office, the government of Guyana has processed approximately 2,000 qualified remigrant applications. Mr. Speaker, this highlights the trust and confidence of the diaspora in the PPPC government. The Remigration Unit continues to process applications within 7 working days. This represents 1/3 of the processing time under the APNU AFC government. Mr. Speaker, I set out to highlight Guyana's performance at the level of the Foreign Ministry in advancing our foreign trade development, our foreign policy agenda, as well as our trade policy agenda. The numbers don't lie, Mr. Speaker. We have positioned ourselves as a leader on climate, on energy, and on food. We will continue along that trend, Mr. Speaker, with the leadership of His Excellency and his competent government. And we, as a people, will work together in advancing the interests of the people. Let me take this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to thank the Minister responsible for finance. Again, his team of the Foreign Ministry. Allow me also to thank the members of staff of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation for their support and for their hard work during the year 2024. And let me also commend this budget to this Assembly for its passage. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, gracious Speaker. You know, later this year, when we're the other side of the House, I'm going to miss you. I'm going to miss these exchanges we've had. I'm going to miss you. Members of the National Assembly, Guyanese everywhere, I'm privileged to join with my colleagues, Budget 2025, and I want to thank the members of the government too, who have made presentations. When we find areas to support the government, Mr. Speaker, we will. We have no trouble in doing that. And over the last 4 years, we have found common ground on some occasions. We've seen the measures for children, school grants, go up a little bit. And then we see some kids come out of nowhere. We were all surprised. I saw what you did there. I'm on to you. You raise the money and then you bring out kids from all over the place. I saw what you did there. But that being said, Mr. Speaker, it's difficult to come after the Minister of Foreign Affairs. It's very difficult. I have a hard task on my hand. Year before the last November, there was a motion passed in Venezuela. And we had a lot of fearful people in this country. There was morbid fear. It was palpable. I had the privilege of representing the parliamentary opposition with my colleague from Region Number 1, Mr. Ronald Cox. And we went down there. I went down there to Mabaruma to see our Guyanese brothers and sisters and to stand in support with them. For those who don't know, Region 1 is a border frontier. We went all the way down to Yaroquita, which is the first contact the Venezuelans would have with our country. I didn't see Minister Todd there reassuring our Guyanese brothers and sisters. I didn't see the verbose, goodly bishop. Didn't see the honorable member Suzanne Rodriguez. Didn't see Ashni Singh. Didn't see the vice president. As a matter of fact, to be fair, I did see the commander-in-chief, and he spent about 9 minutes at the waterfront, and then he was gone. The video is there to prove. But those of us who are less fearful, we went down to Yaroquita, we went down to Imbatero, and we spoke to our Guyanese brothers and sisters, and we let them know that we're here for you. I want to leave most of this retort and response to the Foreign Affairs Minister to my eminent colleague Amanzo Walton Desir, who I'm certain will deal with him. Suffice to say that Maduro and his administration, you understand why they have gotten more emboldened under this administration when you listen to the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs. All right-thinking Guyanese advised against the meeting in Argyle, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, for that meeting and what we expended on that, what have we to show for it? Honorable Minister, under your watch, the Haitian situation rose to crescendo under this administration, under our chairmanship of CARICOM, and we declared success because we installed an interim management committee of sorts in Haiti. Haiti is worse off today. I will leave most of it to my eminent colleague, as I said. Guyana's only fared well on the international stage and globally, because we have had in David Arthur Granger the foresight in 2018 to take this matter to the International Court of Justice, and you abuse us for that ever so often. That is why we have done extremely well in this period. Don't let us be confused. And we have done extremely well globally because on this side of the house, we have historically had strong leaders on the international stage. Guyana's foreign affairs must be judged on the success of the fishing license deal with Suriname. We must be judged on that. We treated His Excellency Chandrika Prasad Santokhi to a state visit, and what have we to show for those fishing licenses that we were promised 4 years after? Minister Todd, that is on you and that is on your government. We like to talk half and left half, but I come to talk the other half. This situation persists, Mr. Speaker, as I'm on fishing, Honorable Minister of Agriculture. It persists because Guyanese know everywhere. When you find a paku, you bossy back. How much backstab got? That is the question. The Honorable Member. That is the question we have to ask ourselves. Mr. Speaker, I've come to this esteemed house to address this so-called transformative 2025 budget presented by the senior minister within the office of the president with responsibility for finance. While grand on paper, Mr. Speaker, grand on paper, the budget invites critical examination when viewed through the lens of past fiscal practices, specifically those, but yet finish my law degree in 3 years. When 3 years, while grand on paper, Mr. Speaker, you, Mr. Foreign Affairs Minister, you would serve your time better shouting at Maduro and not at me. While grand on paper, while grand on paper, while grand on paper, while grand on...
Honorable Member Mr. Duncan, I've stopped your clock, right? You'll get back your time. Please, members, there is a standing order with respect to interruption, Honorable Member Todd. Honorable Member Todd, you had a chance to speak. And I want to caution members, in the gallery. Clapping, thumping on the desks is not for you. And if I see that again, I'll have to ask you to be removed. Go ahead, Honorable Member, please.
For the record, I studied communications at the undergraduate level, at the diploma level from 2015, from 2009 for 2 years, pursued law after that, studied for 3 years and passed, didn't fall out. Graduated from the law department of the University of Guyana in 2015. And I became student president in my first year at UG. While grand on paper, Mr. Speaker, the 2025 budget invites critical examination when viewed through the lens of past fiscal practices, specifically those of budgets 2020 through 2024, and the lived experience of Guyanese. Budget 2025, the theme of budget 2025 should be what Guyanese, the theme of budget 2025, Mr. Speaker, should be, the budget theme should be what Guyanese see when they look for an update on the infamous cash grant, printed but not yet available. The theme of this budget should be what Guyanese see when they check the status of the $100,000 cash grant, distribution venue to be determined. From instantaneously in November last year, rather October 10th, instantaneously $200,000 for Guyanese household. It moved to November month 10, before Christmas, before New Year, and Guyanese are still waiting. Benefits from the budget 2025 will remain elusive, Mr. Speaker, like the benefits of past budgets, printed but not yet available. Distribution venue to be determined. Don't let this come into this house, Mr. Speaker, and try to kerfuffle us and Guyanese people as though independence was gained in this country in 2015. The PUP has had 32 years in government. 32 years. What have we to show for it? A young teacher took me to a field at the back of, I think it was Diamond, said my house lot somewhere here. Somewhere. And of course, we didn't build anything. So while my colleague was showing me that vast expanse, somewhere out here, the land is, the Honorable Member Susan Rodriguez had a cutlass chopping her way to Linden. She wasn't using the highway. A young nurse said, yes, I got a house lot. I paid for it, I got a title, but I don't know where it is. I've never been shown a map, a space where this house is, and that is replicated thousands of times in this country. Why? Because you want to come and preach in the National Assembly, we give out 6,000 house lots, but people never see them and don't have access to them. Guyana, here is something you didn't know. We are meeting at a time, Mr. Speaker, when the former technical director of operations at Gaisuco, Dwarka Bahadur, says that the hiring of 7 Cuban experts at a huge cost to help the factory operations has yielded no tangible results. He says similar recruitments from India will likely produce the same results. Let us set the economic context from which we will interrogate Budget 2025. Bahadur went on to state the company, through whatever deliberations, sought to bring 7 Cuban experts for the factories at enormous cost to the company, who have to date made 0 contributions. And I repeat, Bahadur says 0. He goes on to say Gaisuco needs field help, but only receive factory experts. Let us set the context for the budget. He goes on to say, I am inclined to say, as a trained, qualified technologist, I am dismayed at the seemingly casual response to the challenges of the sugar industry, tinkering with the structure, Honorable Minister, and blaming the directors, Bahadur says, would not solve the problems of the industry. Guyana, here is something you didn't know. We're meeting at a time when companies are closing. Last budget, the budget before, I heard the Honorable Minister of Finance premise huge job growths based on BPOs they were bringing. This is business processing outsourcing companies. Intel closed last year. That BPO, they closed last year under the magnificent watch of this government. Nice time in the economy. Let me tell you something you didn't know. More nice time. Midas BPO transitioned out of their business in Linden. That they like to quote, they brought 100 jobs to Linden through Midas BPO. They transitioned to a company called Prochant. And Prochant downsized from 100 to 35. This is the other half we didn't hear in the budget context. Acuity BPO also closed, shut down its operations locally. We didn't hear about that. That glowing part of the budget, that glowing part of the economy. But it was not just limited to BPOs. For instance, a company called Own the Coconuts, they closed the factory last year. Last year, I'm happy to bring you up to speed. Demerara Bakery closed its doors last year. And lots of these companies keep mentioning rising costs. Guyana, here is something you didn't know. single largest project that we're investing in the gas to shore. We've been adamant this project needs a feasibility study, and we were told the Exim Bank and its consultants did a feasibility study. But we learned recently from the Exim Bank, and I want to quote the letter from the Exim Bank. The Exim Bank, based on a request that was made, states this, Mr. Speaker: you have requested any and or all feasibility studies conducted by the US Exim Bank for loan application, and it states the loan application. We've conducted a comprehensive search of the files within the Office of the Board Authorized Finance, Engineering, and Environmental Department for records that would be responsive to your requests. This is the component within Exim, this is the bank talking, in which responsive records could reasonably be expected to be found. Please be advised, we are unable to locate or identify any responsive records as Exim did not conduct a feasibility study. Talk half and left half. Guyana, just in case you didn't know.
Honorable member, you've completed the first part of your presentation, including the time I gave you back. You have 5 minutes to conclude. Can someone so move?
Mr. Speaker, I do move that the honorable member be given 5 minutes to conclude his presentation.
Thank you, Honorable Member Jones. Honorable Member, you may continue in 5 minutes and conclude.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. To get a good snapshot of where we are as a company, for the last year plus, every Monday, Sabbath News publishing how the cost of living affecting you. How the cost of living affecting Guyanese. $80 a pound of sugar has gone up to $240, has gone up to $300. Rice has gone from 2,010 kg back to 2,800, right? And it has gone beyond that. They mentioned transportation costs has gone up. Among other things, housing materials, honorable member, cement, zinc sheet, sand has all gone up. Just in case you didn't know. Pensioners like Venus Wright struggle with the high cost of living. Farmers like Ramlakan Bismuth lament $5,000 barely buys necessities. You got Natasha Williams, a single mother, who says, I have to work 2 jobs to keep my children fed and in school. Housing for me is out of reach. Dennis Marshall, a fisherman, highlights the price of fuel gone up. Gloria Singh, a small shop owner, laments people just don't have the money to buy. Rajesh Narayan, a mechanic, says spare parts are so expensive now, and the list goes on and on and on and on and on, Mr. Speaker. And on and on. Here's something you didn't know, Minister Utad. Billions dedicated to housing and water, and yet we have no comprehensive spending details. We don't have that. Bureau of Statistics, $2 billion later, can't produce the census. Just in case you didn't know, Minister Todd. Fiscal deficit keeps increasing. Sugar has declined 21%. Income tax out of this world. No tax record. Exxon, Hex, and their counterparts, Sinuk, as well. The part-time job scheme just keeps going up. Why? It is signaling underemployment. The fishing sector, 1% growth. Gold mining sector, 0.5 growth. The government's diversification rhetoric is contradicted. Island gas is carrying everything else, and the non-oil sector keeps failing us, just in case you didn't know. As I conclude, Mr. Speaker, Budget 2025 is not a vision for progress. It is a missed opportunity. It prioritizes political agenda of the PPP over the practical needs of the Guyanese people. It is an election year budget, over-reliance on oil revenues, lack of transparency, inadequate measures to address poverty and inequity mar this budget, Mr. Speaker. It mars this budget.
Honorable Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, the Honorable Member, Mr. Kwame McCoy. You may proceed with your contribution, Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wished that the AFC had done a feasibility study on the stage they mounted at Parade Ground that collapsed. I wish they had done a feasibility study on the art of governance. Mr. Speaker, I wish they had done a feasibility study on Durban Park even. It is very, 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 very clear, Mr. Speaker, that what we continue to hear in this house, and by the way, I walked with this compilation of major sins of APNU AFC in highlights of incompetence and neglect of people. And this is just part of it.
Volume 1 of many.
We are not afraid of people. In the worst of times, we are with people. In the good times, we're still with them. So we don't have to be afraid to go to region 1, 9, 7, 8, 10, wherever exist situations where our people need us. And we have an impressive record of engagement with people, outreaches with people across this country, day in, day out. No part in the history of this country we've had that before. We don't have cardboard images for people to interface and interact with. We have real ministers, a real president, a real prime minister on the ground meeting people every single day. Mr. Speaker, not so long ago in 2020, to be precise, the Guyanese citizens parted ways with APNU AFC, goodbye Tata, whose globally unmatched incompetence left Guyana teetering on the precipice of economic collapse.
Oh, yes. Tell them.
Their lackluster governance manifested in catastrophic job losses across every sector of our country, affecting the livelihood of over 30,000 Guyanese workers, and additionally, with a tragic impact on 70,000 family members. Somewhere in this house, somewhere in here, oh yes, Mr. Speaker, the Shaggies on the other side of this house will barefacedly deny it wasn't me. Hey, it wasn't me.
Oh, yes.
The APNU AFC coalition government's reckless policies shattered the hope, aspirations, and dreams of Guyanese, and by extension, in communities across our country. The calamitous display of con artistry, profound misunderstanding of rudimentary economics,
You're being charitable today.
calculated misrepresentation of factual and realistic occurrences, and clumsy denials of their involvement in electoral criminality will all manifest, in fact, have already manifested themselves here today in this house. Mr. Speaker, a reckless imposition of over 300 new taxes and fees as an albatross around the necks of the working class, it wasn't me. Presided over the worst unaccountability and mismanagement in our nation's history, it wasn't me. Gold bangles decorated on the hand of a former minister, purchased with misappropriated funds, it wasn't me.
Oh,
The larceny of the country's first oil and gas signing bonus of $18 million.
Beep. Check the word. You check back.
Mr. Speaker, the history of this country has already, the records will show that
unlawfully
a former minister denied
its existence.
the existence and the collection of a signing bonus of 18 million US dollars. And then, when they were exposed, he said he thought it was a gift. A gift to whom?
Coming to us.
A gift. So it is very clear, and that was in Parliament. But Mr. Speaker, in the face of this ruinous legacy, we, the People's Progressive Party Civic, have remained steadfast as true stewards of the economy, as true defenders and protectors of our sacred democracy, ensuring that never again will the APNU AFC interlopers be able to attempt the heist of our entire election in broad daylight. Mr. Speaker, consistent adherence to and the preservation of the rule of law and an abiding commitment to the empowerment of Guyanese people and the betterment of their lives remain at the heart of our policies and programs of the People's Progressive Party Civic Government. Over just 4 short years, considering 2 years of COVID-19 setbacks, we honored the people's mandate through results-oriented delivery of goods and services. And today, the social contract entered into with our citizens through our resounding and definitive 2020 mandate, Guyana's most ambitious and transformative agenda ever undertaken in the history of our nation, prioritizes the well-being of Guyanese above everything else, while those with unpatriotic and narrow, self-serving partisan agendas who always just seek to disrupt, divide, badmouth, and trample upon our achievements will never be allowed to succeed.
Never. Never.
Budget 2025 adds to our transformative vision grounded in sustainable development, which advances education, diversifying the economy, and modernizing our infrastructure. We are improving the quality of life of Guyanese, where every citizen has the opportunity to thrive, to partake in the bounty of the prospering economy, and to contribute to a democratic society that embodies the will of the people. I therefore commend my colleague, the Honorable Dr. Ashni Singh and his staff at the Ministry of Finance, and indeed all other public servants, for presenting another transformative plan for the advancement of our great nation, Budget 2025. A bold affirmation of the government's unwavering commitment to a people-centered development agenda that is rooted in the principles of equity, inclusivity, and sustainable progress. Through Budget 2025, the PPPC government is continuing to charter a course towards an integrated, diversified, and robust economy, ensuring that every citizen, irrespective of where they live, can benefit from the abundant opportunities created by the growth of both the oil and non-oil sectors. This budget places a particular emphasis on enhancing Guyana's infrastructural capacity with monumental investments in energy, transportation, and water sector. The construction of new roads, bridges, drainage systems, alongside a focus on renewable energy, reflects the government's recognition that modern infrastructure is integral to the improvement of living standards across our country. Mr. Speaker, Budget 2025 is another example of people's empowerment. It does make a huge difference when an ordinary interland resident, man and woman and child, now has equitable access to quality health care, solid secondary education, potable water, and unfettered access to our menu of social welfare programs altogether. Guyanese globally celebrated LCDS transfers direct financial benefits to 253 interland and Amerindian communities, where as part of their self-governance feature, the monies are used to administer their community affairs. The former regime's broken record has been sung for the past 4 years, that we had no access to oil money. It's a sorry excuse to mask the poor performance of the failed APNU AFC regime. By constantly singing that song, they hoped that the people would forget that they were raking in hundreds of billions of new money from the more than 300 new taxes and fees they imposed on us. Permit me to dismantle one of the most disingenuous arguments advanced by our colleagues on the opposite side during this debate. If money were truly the issue, their actions would have been guided by service to the public rather than self-enrichment. And therein lies the profound contradiction. While they claimed financial constraints, their immediate actions, once they assumed office in 2015, belied their rhetoric. Their ink had not dried on the instruments of appointment when they gave themselves a 50% salary increase under the guise of increased workload. Laughable indeed. They had increased workload.
No,
The least,
no, they said they had to be paid not to be corrupt.
that too. But it ended up being the opposite anyway.
Clearly they knew themselves.
The cry of no oil money for the people never once stopped the APNU AFC
You knew yourself.
from embarking on frivolous, extravagant ventures that drained resources such as the colossal waste of over $1 billion on Durban Park. What a monument. Ramjitan, aren't you proud of Durban Park? I'm sure you are. What a monument. Money that evaporated. Up to now, they can't give account for over $600 million of that $1 billion. They're looking for projects done by the People's Progressive Party civic government, Mr. Speaker. Tracker from the US television series is still looking for the missing monies from the Durban Park project. Their priorities were more about beds, bangles, bracelets, bed sheets, than about fulfilling the most basic needs of people who had placed their trust in them. The people were not fooled, Mr. Speaker. They saw the disparity between the promises made and the reality that unfolded. And they understood that the APNU AFC were more interested in securing their own future than the future of Guyanese people. But let us be absolutely clear. This was never a matter of limited resources. It was a matter of intent. And the intent was to enrich themselves, to divert resources away from the masses and funnel them into their own pockets, knowing that their promises were empty, and going green by painting buildings green was mere window dressing.
Tell them, come.
It was about constructing a system that empowered just a few at the expense of the many. And when it came to showing any true concern for people, such as the over 7,000 sugar workers who were unceremoniously sent home without severance or compensation, the APNU AFC turned a blind eye, unwilling to extend the bare minimum of support, leaving these workers without nothing but broken dreams and hearts. Mr. Speaker, when APNU AFC leaders found themselves confronted with the discontent of the Guyanese people, they resorted to an absurd, embarrassing gesture. Rather than engage directly with the people, they put forward a cardboard replica of their former leader, Granger. Contrast this, Mr. Speaker, with the leadership of our president and government, whose visits to the diaspora and engagements with people across this country, both at home and abroad, altogether are marked by authenticity and deep care, affection, and empathy. Our government embodies the true essence of leadership. Whether it's Brooklyn or Berbice, this People's Progressive Party civic government is engaged, compassionate, and in touch with the needs of the people. Our government listens to the citizens and makes adjustments in its policies and programs where necessary. We listen to the real needs on the ground, and we design measures and initiatives that meet those needs. Our government has championed the needs and the aspirations of the working class. We have remained true to our ideals. We've kept faith with the people. We have remained grounded and accessible to people, and we continue to work day in and night to create betterment for all our citizens. Let us not be deceived by the empty slogan that the extravagant promises or the hollow symbols of the quasi-leadership that we'll continue to hear from the other side. The APNU AFC had the opportunity to serve people, to lead without empathy, and they led without empathy. And they made a mess of the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, friends, family, and favorites. Friends, families, and favorites. I stand today fully aware and indeed deeply appreciative of the role my colleagues on the other side are playing, whether they realize it or not, in helping to amplify the vision of our one Guyana, a vision that in stark contrast to their divisive and exclusionary tactics seeks to unite all Guyanese, irrespective of their political affiliation, region, or socio-economic standing. This is a vision that is actively dismantling the entrenched legacies of neglect that the APNO AFC cabal perpetuated on the people of this country. The same cabal that deprived the people of our hinterland, stripping over 1,900 CSOs of employment. And yet, Mr. Speaker, they are the same individuals who now stand before us preaching a gospel of exclusion and disillusionment. While we, the government of the people, we, the government of the people, remain committed to lifting up every last corner and citizen of this great nation. Allow me, and I'm happy, that's why I'm speaking for them. Allow me to thank my colleagues on that side of the house once again, for as we speak today, my Guyanese family in Region 1 is benefiting directly from the immense strides made in improving river transport, from enhanced medical services, improved educational facilities, all because as a truly caring government, we refuse to leave even the most remote communities behind. Communities that were forgotten under your government. Communities that have now found solace and opportunity in the forward march of progress under the People's Progressive Party civic government. My indigenous Guyanese family in Region 9 is experiencing the transformative power of a massive housing program. And as we push forward, Miss Waterfront Walton, take note. We have friends across Linden too. My friends in Linden who have long enjoyed the benefits of electricity subsidies under this PPP civic government are now reaping more rewards of a revitalized bauxite industry, a new lane highway, a new 4-lane highway, that is, connecting them to the broader national landscape, a new toll-free 4-lane Wisma Bridge, a new Letem to Mabura Highway, and over 600 new house lots distributed to the people of Region 10. My friends in Linden are secure knowing that this government remains steadfast in its commitment to ensuring that all Guyanese, regardless of their political affiliation or region, have access to the essential services they need to thrive in this modern world. And of course, Mr. Speaker, let us turn our gaze to our favorites, the very individuals who sit across from me today, whose political theatrics are nothing more than an attempt to mislead and deceive the people of this country, who had no hesitation in walking like the comrade, the Honorable Annette Ferguson, no hesitation in walking on the newly paved roads in communities considered PNC strongholds after failing to organize a protest against the road. Those roads constructed by this PPP civic government, roads built for the people, roads that have transformed lives and communities, and yet these, our favorites, despite walking on those roads, had no qualms in proclaiming to the citizens that this government has done nothing for them. While they, the very same favorites, grinned for the cameras when the enumerators registered them for the 100,000 cash grant, a grant that will bring tangible benefits to every adult citizen. The very people they now seek to deceive and mislead, telling them this is not for you, as though they have some divine right to withhold progress from the very citizens who have benefited most from the initiatives rolled out by this administration. Mr. Speaker, it is as brazen as it could get. It is as brazen as it is repugnant. A level of duplicity that can only be described as cynical, where those who have benefited most from the programs and policies of this PPPC administration dare to undermine the very government that made their benefits possible. All in the name of political expediency, all for the hollow gain of a few, all while the people of Guyana, the real people, not the privileged elite on that side of the house, see through the charade. Mr. Speaker, this morning's first speaker denigrated, insulted the working people of this country. A total disrespect, Mr. Speaker. When she can speak in such a demeaning way of women, young people, men, ordinary people of this country who on a daily basis get into their workplaces, wherever it is, setting themselves to a task to earn a daily living, to make money to feed their families, to be able to live themselves out of poverty, to take advantage of the opportunity of a job. They were insulted. I, Mr. Speaker, ask that the honorable member retract that comment. Retract it. Workers of all type and skills and talent and experience make up the Guyanese workforce. And they support our economy, the growth and the development of our economy. Workers, whether they work in the hotel industry, in the construction industry, they work even in any industry, in any sector, in any workplace, are people who are deserving of our admiration and commendation for their first understanding of them wanting to work and to work hard and honestly for a living. They should never be embarrassed. They should never be made to feel as if they're lesser than those who are in the field of medicine or law or any profession. They have a right to a job. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, you can recognize, Mr. Speaker, the difference between us and you on that side. Us and you on that side. The people of this country have recognized it, long recognized it, Mr. Ramjatan, that their only resolve will be to keep you right there, to keep the Shaggies right there. It is this government, under the visionary leadership of our president, who has sought to break the shackles of neglect that is so painstakingly constructed under your government, the APNU AFC coalition government. Today, we can see clearly now progress that is not mired in empty rhetoric, but is grounded in real impactful action and progress that includes every single Guyanese, family, friends, and favorites alike. I am pleased that Budget 2025 will advance our government's agenda for fair, equitable access to information and public engagement. In analyzing the landscape of political and media engagement in Guyana, one cannot help but acknowledge the stark contrast between the APNU AFC that came before the People's Progressive Party Civic, as our commitment to transparent public discourse and media relations stands as a monumental shift in the political ethos, a clear departure from the darkness of opacity that once defined the political climate under the previous regime, where engagement with the public, engagement with the media.
Honorable Minister, your engagement here needs 5 minutes extension.
I'd like to ask for additional 5 minutes for my honorable member to conclude his statement.
Thank you, Minister Teixeira. Honorable Member, Mr. Kwame McCoy, you may continue. 5 minutes to conclude.
Where engagement with the public, engagement with the media, and the very idea of accountability seem to be a mere afterthought, a farce, a performance more for the cameras than for the citizens of this great nation under your watch. You would recall, and I spoke already, perhaps I shouldn't restate, the cardboard images, the silence by our president and ministers of the former government when the air was thick with silence, with an alarming absence of genuine press conferences, leaving journalists scrambling for scraps of information in an environment where access to the corridors of power was limited, where public officials were too often hidden behind closed doors, where the APNU AFC government, instead of embracing scrutiny, operated as though it feared the light of public examination. And it is said, with no small degree of irony, Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, that the President Granger, in the early years of his presidency, conducted a series of press conferences so rare that they were almost mythical.
No, he's on y'all. He's on y'all. That's why you're there.
Today, unlike you,
It was the war.
unlike you, we have hundreds of
Remember, Honorable Minister, you're speaking to me.
Mr. Speaker, unlike those on the opposite side, we have numerous hundreds of engagements by our cabinet and president every day, keeping in touch with people, ensuring that people are connected to us for the purpose of us continuously working for their development. That is our understanding of how a government operates. Under our government, my favorites on the other side, you have seen the true potential of what a government truly committed to is about. Its people looks like, where transparency is not just a buzzword, but a fundamental pillar upon which the administration stands, and where the press is not seen as an adversary to be avoided, but as a partner in the pursuit of truth, of justice, and of progress, a far cry from the days when your cardboard images, the cutout cardboard images of your leaders, stand in for real engagement. In 2025, Mr. Speaker, you will see us continuously working to ensure that the government information services benefit citizens through the provision of information and education to help them to make decisions about their lives and to understand what their government is about and what their government is doing, and to be able to measure us by our actions, and for the purpose including accountability, inclusive of accountability and transparency. Over the past 4 years, we have retooled the state media apparatus and rebuilt the human capacities to ensure robust professional service to our people. And while they rabble-rouse over there about equitable access, the people must be reminded that our state media is a state media that provides and serves the people of Guyana every single day. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, 2025 budget is a bold, visionary blueprint that addresses both the immediate and long-term needs of the people of Guyana. It is a budget that balances the imperatives of economic growth with the principles of equity, sustainability, and social inclusion. Under the leadership and the leadership of our president and the People's Progressive Party civic government, this budget exemplifies a government committed not merely to the superficialities of development, but to the deep, lasting transformation of our nation, ensuring that all Guyanese can share in the prosperity that we all are building for our future. This, Mr. Speaker, is a budget worthy of all of our commendation. This budget is worthy of our support as it continues a program of development, of transformation, and prosperity for the people of Guyana. And I do so commend Budget 2025 to this House for passage.
Thank you.